apparently young people, they were afraid of raw poultry. They like eating chicken. These are not vegetarians. They like eating chicken. They like having cooked chicken. But they increasingly can't deal with the idea of handling raw poultry. Now, raw poultry is perfectly fine. I've become quite an expert at handling raw chicken. When I get a raw chicken, I take it out of its packaging. I get a little tub and I put some butter in the tub. And I put the dried herbs and salt and pepper and mixed seasoning and all that. I mix that in with the butter. And then I stuff half of it up the chicken's arse. And then, a real game changer I learned on Christmas Day about 7 or 8 years ago when I was doing this to a turkey. I learned that the way you do it, and you can become quite adept at this, it's difficult the first couple of times, but you get the hang of it. At the bottom of the back on each side, there's an opening in the skin. You can fit a finger under there and stretch it a bit, and once you do that, you can stuff the butter up in under the skin, and that lubricates the poultry very well for when you're roasting it, and that's how you achieve that. Well, the young people won't do that. They go, that's like putting my finger up someone's arse who's dead. Apparently it would be preferable if they weren't dead, I don't know. Oh no, they think that's like putting my finger up someone's arse and then putting them in the crematorium for an hour and 15 minutes, removing the tin foil for the last 10 minutes or so, and then taking it out, covering it with tin foil, and then allowing the juices to settle, and then carving it and serving it with vegetables and potatoes. They think it's exactly like doing that, and you don't want to do that, and they certainly don't want to handle raw poultry. They've also been told quite rightly that there are dangers to handling raw poultry. If you touch raw poultry and then before you get a chance to wash your hands, you touch the tap, you get raw poultry juices on the tap, and then you need to wash the tap to get the juices off with hot water from the tap. How in the name of Christ are you supposed to do that? I suppose you get a little hose for that purpose. You get a hose so you can hose down the tap with the tap. I understand young people will get a bit weirded out about that. It's like pissing into your own rectum or something. It's not really like that. What I do in that case is get a paper towel and I dip that in some hot water and washing up liquid, and I clean the tap with that. And I throw that straight in the bin, and then your tap is clean again. You can wash your hands under the tap, and then you get on with your cooking day and not kill anyone with salmonella, which I suppose is a good thing. I suppose it's a good thing. And what you young people, of course, have to bear in mind, as I said, according to independent research, and by that I mean independent of me, something I read about in a news article somewhere, young people don't like to handle raw poultry, and supermarkets are trying to accommodate that by selling more cooked poultry. You go into a supermarket nowadays, well, you go at the right time of the day, with something like between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. And you go up, you find this hot shelf where they have all these completely cooked whole chickens. They cook them and then they put them into this weird plastic bag. They seal that and you put that in your trolley. And then you go, oh, this is perfectly fine. This is much better than handling a raw chicken and decorating it with herbs and spices. I say decorating them with herbs. You might think you're not putting the herbs on to look pretty. Well, actually, that's not entirely the case. I know you young people, you haven't seen a raw chicken or cooked a raw chicken in your lifetime because it's like seeing a penny farthing bicycle. It's a thing of the past. But you used to get these chickens and you'd put your herbs and spices and butter on, and obviously that was all about making it taste nice and making it moist. One of the things I would put on it was parsley. And parsley isn't something you put on it for taste. Not dried parsley anyway. You don't put that on for taste. You put it on because it looks nice. A bit of green stuff sprinkled on a raw chicken just looks nice. A raw chicken can look nice. I know you don't want to think about handling it or touching it or anything. And you certainly don't want to eat it or even lick it and taste it. Don't do that. Don't ingest raw chicken or raw chicken juices ever of any kind. And always wash your hands after handling them. Oh no, you can look at it quite safely. It's not like looking directly at the sun with the naked eye. You can look at a raw chicken after you've prepared it while you're waiting for the oven to heat up. You can admire your work. You've sprinkled dry parsley leaves on it. It looks nice. I think it looks nice. I think the only thing I find off-putting about looking at a raw chicken that's being decorated with parsley is the raw red bits at the end of the wings. The tips of the wings are kind of red. They look rather vulgar. Or of course you can get around that. You can put a little bit of tinfoil at the end of the wings or whatever that is. That's the only off-putting bit. I know the inside of it is off-putting, but you don't have to look at that. After you've prepared it to go in the oven, you step back and admire your handiwork for a minute. When you're admiring your handiwork, you don't have to be looking at the disgusting bits inside and all that. You're just looking at it as a work of culinary art, even without examining the inside of the chicken's arse or anything. You have the confidence and satisfaction that you've put the butter in all the right places where it's going to turn out delicious. If you play your cards right and attend to the oven cooking process properly, you're going to have a delicious moist chicken at the end of it. So you admire that. Now, I know what you're thinking there. You're thinking, this is very unfair. This whole system is very unfair. Because I set up this podcast, I came across this podcast and I added it to my playlist. And now it's come on. I'm driving my car. I can't stop and change it, but this thing has come on and I've realised instantly within 3 seconds of when he started talking, I realised, oh no, this isn't for me. This isn't for me. I'd give it a try, but 3 seconds in, I go, this isn't for me, and you can't change it. We're a captive audience, and I understand that. I sympathise. That happens to me sometimes. I don't drive, but sometimes a new podcast that I want to try, I'll put it in my playlist and it'll come up. I'll be in the middle of something, won't be in a position to change it. First episode will come up. I've never heard it before. The fella starts talking, and 3 seconds in, I go, no, absolutely not. No, fuck this shit. This is fucking God. He may be one of the most wisest, or most entertaining, or most interesting person on the planet. But no, I can't listen to that voice. I can't listen to that voice. There's no way I can listen to that voice. And the reason I can't listen to that voice is because I'm a hateful bigot. I hear an Irish accent come on, hear a fella who's got some dental issues, and this weird accent that's from all over the place. And he's over enunciating, so it does something to his accent as well that sounds weird. No, I can't listen to that. I can't listen to that. No, I'd rather listen to... I don't know what I'd rather listen to, but I know I'd rather not listen to this. I'd not listen to this. I understand and I sympathise. There's nothing really I can do about it. You can put in a preview sample episode. I could make one that's 3 seconds long. Add that to your playlist to try. And then you listen to 3 seconds of it. And then the next thing on your playlist comes on and then you can think, wait, that was 3 seconds of that new thing I was thinking of trying. Do I like that or do I not? Problem there, of course, is if you decide you do like it based on the 3 seconds, you have to remember later to add some more episodes to your playlist, and you're not going to remember that. If you're so disorganized that you have to add things to your playlist so you remember to try them, you're not going to remember based on 3 seconds that this sounds promising and that you want to add some more to your device later. No, you're not going to remember to do that. That's not a practical solution at all. So I don't know how to help you with that. I don't know how to help you with that, except to say I sympathise. You have my sympathy, and I don't mean that sarcastically. As I say, this happens to me quite a lot. I'll try some new podcast. In the first 3 seconds, he'll say 5 sentences because he's talking too fast, because he's had too much Red Bull, and each sentence will start with the word like. And every third word will be the or word that young American podcasters seem to like. They'll come across someone who they want to criticise and they say, oh, that fella, he's the or word. Use the or word, the word beginning with or. They won't say that. They'll actually say the word. Well, I won't. I won't say the or word. I have people who you would consider to be or words, except they're not words, they're actual people in my actual family. And they're human beings. They have names, for one thing. Call them by their names. Say, oh, that's Philip, that's Bartholomew. They don't just call them the or word. If you come across someone who's the opposite, who's a genius, you don't say, oh, he's genius. See that fella there, that genius there. No, for one thing, there could be hundreds of geniuses within your. Maybe not. There's probably not a lot of geniuses around you, to be fair, but you can't just say genius. For one thing, you're trying to say that as a criticism, presumably, because if you say the or word, you're someone who likes to criticize and put down. So if you're going to call someone a genius, you're not going doing that as a compliment. Your intentions are negative. But you say it and it comes out as a compliment. That's maybe why you started using the or word in the first place. You realise you live with a lot of people who are quite intellectual and you call them genius, which you thought was a put down. One of your friends took you aside one night and you say, you know the way you call people geniuses and you think you're being really mean and horrible. They love that. They love that. Keep it up. Keep doing that. They're probably saying that sarcastically. You finally get the idea. Don't go around calling people geniuses. You start calling people the or word. Then you also think, oh, he's such an or word. He doesn't know what the or word means, so I can just say it without causing offence. That's what you think. A lot of the people who do this, they'll say, it's a medical word. It means exactly this. It means it's a medical word. You go up to my family member who's one of those in the street and call them that. You'll think, oh, that's perfectly fine. He's fucking crying now. And you teach your children, it's a medical term. It's perfectly fine. It's a real word. It's just like the F word in some countries is a very old legal term. It stands for full unlawful carnal knowledge. And that's fine because you're not calling someone an F word. It's not the same thing. That's the point. Where was I? You're probably in the car. You're going, oh, I can't find another podcast while I'm driving, but I could switch to the radio, I suppose. So you switch to the radio. And then what happens is, well, you won't hear this now, so there's no point me telling you what happens. There's a parallel universe where you're not listening to this. You don't get to hear what I say next, which is that you put on the radio, and then a fella comes on the radio and says, hello, we're starting the radio program now, so what we'll do is play 8 jingles, and then your news that matters where you live in your cocoon. Do you live in a cocoon? You probably do. You probably think of it as a car, but it's a cocoon. You go there, you get up out of bed. Your bed is the back seat of your car because you live in your car. You go to the front seat of your car and you turn on the engine and then you push it down on one of the pedals and you release the handbrake and then you start moving. And then you look out through the windows to see what's out. You see, oh, I wonder what the weather's like today. Is it raining? Is it foggy? How's the visibility? What's going on outside? Is that the postman? I wonder, does he know where to find me? Because I'm usually still in bed when he arrives. How does that work living in your car? The postman comes and you're asleep and you can't answer the door. Do you have a doorbell on your car? Maybe you do. Or do they just knock? If you're asleep in your car and someone comes and knocks, that's terrifying. And a postman comes along, he has a letter for you. He has your address. It's the car just around the corner from the place where you used to be able to afford to live. So he brings that there. You haven't left for your morning commute yet. Your morning commute is probably quite short because you can choose where to live when you live in your car. You can choose where to put your car. You just have to find a place to park it where the hourly parking rate is substantially less than the cost of renting an apartment or a house. How much is a parking space? It's probably 100,000. If you can't afford a parking space, you're going to end up renting. And if you're going to be renting a parking space for 5-10 years of your life while you try to save a deposit to buy a parking space, good chance you're going to be stuck in rented parking for the rest of your life, especially in today's economy. That's the problem with living in your car. I suppose if you're renting a parking space, if your car isn't huge, there's enough space to fit a portable toilet in the parking space. Does it work like that? The parking space is presumably marked out by white lines. You're entitled to use all of that space, surely, especially if you're renting it, you're leasing it, or you're buying it. You should be able to use every inch of that as long as it's within the planning regulations, I suppose. It's perfectly reasonable to put out a picnic table at one end of that parking space and a couple of deck chairs. If you have a small car that has a hatchback, so you open that up, that serves as a little shelter. It's like a little balcony at the back of your car then, except it's better than a balcony. There's a lot of balconies that are not sheltered. The back of your car is sheltered by the open door of the back of the car, so that's good. Maybe you put down some artificial grass at the front of the car, have a little space there where you put artificial grass, or at either side of the car, a little garden around the edge of your parking space. Now, you have a car, there's going to be oil dripping onto that, so it might be hard to keep that clean, but that's okay. That's okay. If you play your cards right and set up the artificial grass properly, you can make it look like the whole parking space is grass and that you're parked on grass. But you're not really, because underneath the car where you can't see, there's no grass there, it's just concrete. Realistically, grass wouldn't grow under the car anyway. You wouldn't want to put artificial grass under the car, because people will say, that can't be. How did that grow there? He's cheating. People are very weird about artificial grass. They say, that fella, he's put down artificial grass. For some reason, they get very worked up and disgusted about this. I know this because I considered getting an artificial lawn once. I looked into it. People very negative about it. They think, how dare he have something that's not real? It's just an outdoor floor covering. It's no different than your concrete driveway or your patio that's made of tiles. It's just an area that would otherwise be mud or badly maintained grass. I hear as well it can be difficult to keep clean. If you have pets going out there pissing on that, you have to go and mop your lawn every day and pick up the crap. I don't know. Anyway, that's living in a car for you. You can do whatever way you like. It's great. Are you going into your head? I used to have a recurring dream as a child about a world where instead of sleeping in a bedroom in your house, you sleep in your bed outdoors somewhere. And then later in life, I came across a Pink Floyd album cover. One of their last albums, the cover of it has rows and rows and rows and rows of beds lined up in perfect lines out in the open in a field or a desert or somewhere. It's very striking. Now, I can't remember what used to happen in the dream, but I do remember that I used to wake up sometimes of a Saturday morning, early in the morning, and I'd wake up, I wouldn't open my eyes. I convinced myself that somehow during the night I'd been displaced from my bed and put out in a field somewhere, and that when I opened my eyes, I was going to have to deal with the horrors of being in my bed but out in a field somewhere in the middle of nowhere. How to get home, how to get out of there was terrifying, and I would try to delay opening my eyes. And maybe I was just kidding myself, I just didn't want to wake up. That was a narrative I applied to it. I'm afraid to wake up. I know, I would eventually wake up. Now that you mention it, this is when I was 7 or 8 or 9. And at that time I was living almost directly across the road from an abatoir. I didn't realise what I was at the time. Some mornings, early in the morning, you'd hear squealing from this place that I thought was some sort of weird factory or something. You'd hear squealing. I didn't know what it was. Whatever goes on in some factory. Didn't understand it till years later. And that would happen in the early hours of the morning. And then a couple of hours later every morning, a giant truck would come, labelled Drogheda and Dundalk Dairies. Drogheda and Dundalk are the far side of Dublin from there. It's way over the opposite side of the city and then up an hour or so. It's nowhere near there. For some reason, they'd come to this place in the southern suburbs of Dublin and either deliver or collect milk. I don't know what they were doing. There was a big lorry. They were spending about 5 minutes trying to reverse into this place, the bottom of a housing estate. They tried to reverse this articulated lorry into this premises that I didn't know what it was. And right next door to that premises, there was a vet's. Now that I think about it, that was all a bit weird. I knew what the vets was. I didn't know what went on in the place that had a visit every day from the Drogheda and Dundalk Dairies lorry. They're absolutely ridiculous. And now that I think about it, I weren't directly opposite that place. We were maybe 10 doors up. There was no houses directly opposite the gate. And now they've built on that land, so there's now some child living in a house that's directly opposite that gate. And they're waking up every morning, they're hearing squealing, and they're probably thinking, we didn't have a pet at the time. But this kid who's waking up in these new houses that are directly opposite that place, they're probably thinking, the vet is next door to that. That screaming I'm hearing could be coming from the vet. And the kid is thinking, our cat is in that vet. Our cat is being left in for tests overnight at that vet. What the hell's going on in there? And why are they delivering the milk to the place next door instead of to the vets where my cat is? What's going on? And this child, of course, unlike me, we didn't have the internet in those days. This child probably takes out his smartphone and does a Google that goes, what in the name of Christ goes on in that place at the bottom of this estate? And then they find out. And then they probably go, wait a minute, that sounds a bit... Am I going to be doing a podcast about this 45 years from now? Or am I going to be sitting on the psychiatrist's sofa talking to one of my clients who prefers to sit in the chair, so I take the sofa? I'm going to be trying to help my patient, but I'm going to be distracted with thoughts of what happened while I was living in this place as a child. A maybe sophisticated child to think that far ahead, I have to say. I didn't do anything of the sort. I didn't think of any of this until I moved away from that place. So well done to the sophisticated children of today, the young people of today. They're a lot more sophisticated. You look at the standard television family sitcom, the child actors and the child characters in those sitcoms, I find them very sophisticated nowadays. If you look at something from the 80s, the American ones were always quite sophisticated. The kids were smart-arsed. And they had all these jokes and they were smart and they gave out cheek to their parents and they needed a slap. Or they were quite impressive at how mature they were. Probably because they were played by 28-year-old actors who had stunted growth or something. But no, they were very impressive. But the sitcoms from this side of the world in the 1980s, the kids weren't that interesting. They were more like the type of kid you'd find in your house if someone came in and tried to make a documentary and they'd be all weird about it, going, oh, I don't want to be on camera. This man from the news is asking questions and they'll be all shy and weird about it. No, the children in sitcoms have advanced in recent years and they're far more sophisticated now. I can't put a finger on what happened. Maybe it's something to do with whatever drugs they're given. Do they give drugs to these child actors? They must do. They must do. I do drugs before this podcast. I drink 3 cans of own brand energy drinks and a lot of coffee. That's essentially drugs. So if I have to do that to do this, then I presume a child who's doing 12 hours of acting every day and going to school at weekends to catch up with a private tutor, and they're starring in some television show shown to millions of people across America, I presume they have to do drugs. Children who are doing that must have to do drugs, surely. Surely they have to do drugs. Surely it's compulsory. I presume they make them. They have people on TV sets whose job is to make sure any animals involved in the show are being looked after humanely and they're not being abused or anything. I presume they have the same for the child actors. I presume these people have to advocate for the children being prescribed drugs, such as perhaps cocaine or what's that one that students like that begins with A? That's legal. What's it called? There's a drug the students have been into the last decade or so. I can't remember the name of it, but it begins with A. They do this drug when they're cramming for exams. So maybe they give that to the children in the sitcoms. I don't know. They must do something, surely. They're not allowed coffee because they're kids, so they have to give them something. That's not a criticism, by the way. If you're a child and you're being given drugs, you take them. I would take them if I was a child. And if you're in charge of that child's well-being, you would advocate for them being given drugs because that's your job. Just as it's your job to advocate for that dog who plays the family pet being given plenty to eat and having a nice place to sleep and relax and being given proper veterinary care, you would advocate for the child to get whatever drugs is considered necessary. That's your job. And you're very good at it. From what I see from today's television, you're very good at it. Of course, nowadays, television is dying, so all of these shows now are streaming series. So they do a series of 10 every 18 months or so. So you're not doing it round the clock all year round. You're doing it for a month. You probably do it during your summer holidays or your spring break or your autumn stoppage or whatever they have in your respective part of the world. You go and do your sitcom then. And then you go back to school and live a normal life. So all child actors now in the new age of television are going to turn out perfectly normal because it's only a small part of their year now. So that's good. That's good. That's progress. That's progress. You've come a long way from the early days where a child star was someone, well, firstly, they were black and white. They'd start off, they'd be in black and white. They'd be in some film. You get some 6-year-old kid who's got curls or something and she'd be singing with Mary Poppins. They'd be going, I can't remember any Mary Poppins song, but I'll try and remember something from that era. They'd be singing along. Mary Poppins would come in, the character, and she'd say to the kids, hello, I'm your nanny or something now. Is that what Mary Poppins was? I think she was a nanny. I'm your nanny. I have an umbrella. I can fly with my umbrella or something. I've never actually seen Mary Poppins. I'm just aware of it from popular culture. I think she has does she have an umbrella or something? She lands like a helicopter, except she uses an umbrella. I suppose more like a hang glider, but she seems to kind of come in more vertical. So it's the helicopter equivalent of a hang glider. I suppose an elevator, but without the elevator. You're doing a natural elevator. She's coming down from the sky using just her umbrella, which she's holding. The umbrella clearly isn't holding her weight. That's not how the laws of physics work. But she can make it appear that way, presumably using magic. She's able to just elevate and come straight down from the sky like she would if she was in an elevator, but it doesn't have to be an elevator. And that's a bit like my virtual toast rack invention that I came up with about 20 years ago. I never patented it. I didn't know what toast racks were for. They seem superfluous to me when you have plates. But I'd learned that the reason people use toast racks is because after you take the toast out of the toaster, you put it on the toast rack, you stand it. If it stands for 30 or 40 seconds, the moisture drains out of it and it instantly makes crunchier toast. I've invented a virtual toast rack. Any clean surface. You take the toast out of the toaster, you get the two slices of toast, you put them upright, you lean them against each other, so it's like the shape of a tent, and that's a virtual toast rack. They just hold themselves up. As long as you're having an even number of slices of toast, a virtual toast rack can be built anywhere. No materials needed. So I presume it's like that with Mary Poppins. She comes down from the sky, but there's no elevator, but she has a virtual elevator. That's probably great for the kids. Oh yes, I was talking about that in the context of child actors. So these child actors in those days, they'd go on some Mary Poppins thing and they'd sing whatever songs they have in the Mary Poppins song. I don't know. I can't remember offhand what songs are involved in the world of Mary Poppins, but something else from that era. I think it might go something like, consider yourself something. Consider yourself part of the family. Consider yourself, etc. So it'd be stuff like that. They're great for having music in these films in those days. That's one thing that's missing from modern situation comedies and dramas and things. The kids don't break out into song like that. Admittedly, modern procedural dramas, they have a bit of that, but the actors don't perform the songs. But about 10 minutes before the end of the show, when all of the storylines are building to a crescendo, they'll have a musical montage. They do this a lot on House. They'll get to nearly the end of the show and House is at his piano at home playing a song and thinking about something. Someone else who's just had a breakup will be showing, sitting looking at photos or something, and then someone else who's just had their heart replaced or something will be seeing, looking thoughtfully at their chest, looking at the, looking wistfully at the hole. Well, not a hole. When you get a heart surgery, you get a vertical line down the middle of your chest, and it looks kind of like a zip, especially while it's healing. It takes a while to heal. It can look kind of like a zip, and it's quite interesting to look at. My father had this. My father had heart surgery, and he come out, and if he had more than one button open on his shirt, you'd see this thing on his chest. It looks scary, and he'd take great pride in showing this off. Siblings would come along and say, "Oh no, I don't want to see that. Don't show me that. Don't tell people to not show you stuff." That's a no. Anyway, I think we're done with that. We're done with the sitcom Mary Poppins thing. It's a pity now. I can't remember any songs from Mary Poppins. She didn't do Consider Yourself. Wasn't that from Oliver, was it? Or maybe something like that. Oh no, Oliver was Charles Dickens. So that would be from a different era. Charles Dickens was the late 1800s. So that wasn't from the same era as Mary Poppins at all. I don't know why I associate the music of Charles Dickens with that. No. Anyway, if you're listening to this in the early years of your life, I don't mean you're a child, you're maybe early on in adulthood, and you've yet to come up with a signature. You've yet to figure out a standard way to sign your name, or you don't want to come up with a standard way to sign your name because you have a bit of artistic flair and imagination, and you believe in writing your name a different way each time and enjoying the different calligraphy, you still have some hope that your life isn't going to be dealing with bureaucracy and writing your name exactly the same way every day for the rest of your life, like you're in some signature factory. You might as well be putting your name on a rubber stamp if you're going to do that. We're supposed to write our name the exact same way every day for the rest of your life. I can't see very well, so the last time I signed something for my bank, I sent it off in the post. I got a thing back a day or two later saying this doesn't match the signature we have on file for you. I could write my name exactly correctly and just write the handwriting slightly different. And they'll say, "No, that's not you, that's clearly someone else. You've written the letter Q slightly differently than you would, and also your name isn't spelt with a Q. So that's not your signature." Well, my signature is that I do a new signature every time. I'm not some fucking me. That's what I'm not. I'm not some fucking me. Are you some fucking me? You're probably not. Or maybe you are. Maybe I'm thinking that you probably are, but it's rude to say so. Or I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt as you're listening to my podcast. Anyway, for the rest of your life, you're writing your name over and over and over and over again, exact same handwriting. You have a computer and a printer, you could easily type your name and it would be exactly the same every day. They'll claim they want you to write your name exactly the same every day, you write your signature exactly identical every day. But if you offer to just type it and print it, which is the most reliable way of doing it exactly the same every day, they'll say that's not a signature. That's just printing. You can't just print it. I need a signature. You need to do a signature, but it has to be exactly the same every day. I think that you should be officially assigned a signature by the government when you're born. Just as you're assigned a social security number, you should be assigned a signature. You shouldn't just have to come up with one yourself. Everyone isn't creative. We people who do creative stuff, we assume that everybody is like that, but everybody isn't like that. People's talents lie in different ways. If you're a mathematician, or an engineer, or a doctor, or a street cleaner, or a fast food operative, or a very successful entrepreneur, doesn't necessarily mean you're creative. And those of us who are creative, we can be shit at all that other stuff. So it's rather presumptuous for everyone in this society to be expected to be creative enough to come up with a distinctive signature. No. Next you'll want us to make a webcomic as well. They say, no, That's not enough. They did that thing a few years ago where you get a unique image. What was it? It's like a little picture, and it's usually a cartoon picture. I think it's something to do with Bitcoin along those lines, and people were paying a fortune to get their unique thing. But they didn't create that. Someone else created that and they bought it. Now, if I'm not creative enough to come up with a signature, I should be assigned one by the government, funded by the taxpayer. I shouldn't have to hire someone to create a signature for me. Next, they want you to hire someone to make your website as well. No. No. The government should have people who help you create a unique signature. Abolish signatures or give us the resources to, because a signature is a commodity. If there had been no national postal system in the early days of this state, it would not have been reasonable for government agencies such as the tax collector to say, you must submit this by post, hire some private transport service provider. And I suppose that's a courier. I suppose he could have done that. But no, you put it in the post box outside the post office and it's going to get there because someone else has provided the system. So it's not reasonable to just go, you must provide a signature. You must come up with that signature using your own means, of your own accord, your own resources. It's not up to us to provide a signature. We're going to demand that you have a signature that you use for the rest of your life, but we're not going to help you come up with it. That's ridiculous. Anyone who doesn't have the means to come up with a signature at an early age ends up just being cast out of society. You have to live in some park somewhere. And even that, they're not allowed to do that because they close the park at night. Or they put these benches set up so you can't lie across them. You can only sit up. Sitting up is fine, but you can't do it 24/7. Not everyone can sleep sitting up, especially out in the cold. No. And all because you can't come up with a signature. Ridiculous. Can you imagine if they did that to people who couldn't? I can't think of an example on demand. They need to just pop into my head as a result of drinking energy drinks. I should be able to bill the government for my energy drinks that I drink to enable me to, I suppose no, because the government doesn't demand that I do a podcast. But if it did, the way it demands that people have a signature, if the government demanded that everyone have a podcast, I'd expect the government to at least make energy drinks available at a reasonable cost. I suppose, is that reasonable? It probably isn't. It probably isn't. I'm probably talking nonsense, am I? I probably am. Well, that's kind of my signature. I talk nonsense, but it's bespoke nonsense and it's different nonsense every day. It's not like a signature. I couldn't do that. Into your head. Two cats walk into a bar. One of the cats says hello, and I've a 250 milliliter serving of your finest orange juice, please. And the man behind the bar says, certainly, sir. Now, what you're asking for there, under government guidelines, amounts to 1.25 servings for the average adult. So do you want me to give you 2 servings? Because I have to charge you for 2. And the cat says, let's give me a 200 milliliter serving, but with an extra shot. Like you do with coffee, you get an extra shot of espresso into your coffee. I know you have to add a charge on for that, but I don't want the full liquid involved in 2 servings of orange juice. Well, I like the juiceness of it. And the man behind the bar says, oh, I'm sorry, I don't really know how I would achieve that. It's not like there's an essence of orange juice like an espresso that I use to make the beverage. No, it comes directly from oranges. I have a bucket of oranges out the back every afternoon. Me or the kid who comes and helps me for a couple of hours after school, we get out the latest delivery of oranges. We put them in the bucket and then we stamp on them for 20 minutes. We make orange crush. It's a bit like what the young people are doing with the avocados, which I think is perfectly fine. They have smashed avocado on toast or whatever. Older people like to criticise this, to say, that fella, no wonder he can't afford a car or a house. He's going around having these smashed avocados. Well, for one thing, a smashed avocado is obviously going to be cheaper than one that's fully intact. If they're doing it right, which they're probably not. I don't mean the kids aren't doing it right. The retail businesses aren't doing this right. If they're doing this right, the fruit and vegetable manager in the supermarket every morning will go around and check the produce, see if any of the latest avocado deliveries are slightly damaged or not fully intact, but perfectly usable. Use them for your smashable avocados. You sell them at a slight discount. He'd say they don't look great. In fact, they do that with vegetables nowadays in Tesco. You can get a bag of imperfect carrots. They don't look completely smooth or perfectly shaped. They've got dents and bumps and things. And they're sold at a discount because of that. So I presume they can do that for avocados. I think the reason they don't do that is because there's really not enough people buying avocados to make that work. Which means those of you who complain about people buying avocados are overstating the problem and spreading misinformation, fake news. And it's not news anyway, because it's been talked about for at least a decade, the smashed avocado thing. Now, you're probably thinking, that doesn't sound right about the oranges. You don't have someone stamping on the oranges. They're not grapes, for one thing. You'd have to peel them first, wouldn't you? Wait, do they peel grapes before they stamp on them to make the wine? Maybe they can mechanically filter out the skin of the grape after they've smashed it. Surely they can do that. What's that program on Discovery Television? It's called How Things Work or How Things Are Made or something. They show all these factory conveyor belts. They show how they make a Mars bar from scratch, and they show all the processes. Machines can do all sorts of things where they sort things and filter things. It wouldn't be inconceivable that they'd have a machine in a factory that could automatically remove the skin from a bucket of smashed grapes. Now, I don't know if they could do the same with oranges, and that's not relevant here because we're talking about a man in a bar in the back room preparing the oranges on premises. He's not getting them from a factory. So what happens there? I'm quite sure they probably don't just put all the oranges in a bucket and stamp on them. No. They also don't have a talking cat come in and ask for 1.25 servings of orange juice. So it's not really meant to be realistic. This isn't a documentary. This is a two cats walk into a bar story. Now it diverged into a thing about raw poultry there. You won't have noticed because I've already decided I'm going to separate the bit about raw poultry and use that as a cold open. So you won't realise that was part of the two cats walk into a bar story in the first place, which I think is quite ingenious of me. I happen to like the poultry segment because I made myself laugh by being rather vulgar. You might think that's very lowbrow. That's very lowbrow content. That's true. That's true. You put that right at the beginning and people hear that and they say, oh, I see. It's like this, is it? It's like this, is it? Well, I've listened to 4 or 5 minutes now, so in for a penny, in for a pound, I suppose. Is that a phrase in other countries? In for a penny, in for a pound. They'll say, you've come this far, you might as well just keep going. You go down a road and you realise it's not going where you want to go, but you can't just do a U-turn on a motorway. Every motorway has these points along it where there's a gap in the medium strip closed off with bollards. If they ever need to divert traffic, they have an opening where they can take up the bollards and arrange for there to be a U-turn facility. And then the U-turn is compulsory. They'll say, oh, this part of the highway is blocked. Everyone follow the cones and they'll lead you around through this gap onto the other side of the highway. You'll either do an S shape where you continue on in the same direction on the other side of the highway in one segregated lane and they make one side of the highway two-way. Or if they're closing down the whole thing, they'll turn it into a U-turn and they'll make everyone do a U-turn. And in that situation where the motorway is blocked off, they make you do a U-turn there. You've had it drilled into your head for your entire motoring life that you can't do a U-turn on a motorway. But now they're saying you can't not do a U-turn on the motorway. And in fact, in that situation, if you decided not to do a U-turn, the first thing that would happen is that you'd see a flashing blue light come up behind you and they'd say, get out of the car, get out of the goddamn car. Well, bring it safely to a stop first. Can't really call it pulling over because you're on the part of the motorway that's closed. So there's really no such thing as pulling over. You're in the non-active part of the road already. Come to a stop, then get out of the goddamn car. We'll have a look at you, see if we're going to shoot you or arrest you or send you off to prison, whatever we do to people. And that's confusing. We drill this into people. No, you can't. You never, ever, 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 ever do a U-turn. And then there's some disaster happens and I say, no, everyone has to U-turn. And if you're not prepared to do a U-turn, don't come here at all. There's this thing people used to go on about on British satirical comedy shows in the 1980s and 90s. They talk about that time Margaret Thatcher, the then Prime Minister who everyone hated, despite having all elected her. Her ministers were talking about a U-turn and she made a speech saying, U-turn if you want to, the lady's not for turning. Now that had some meaning at the time. It was about some situation, a show of strength over some issue. I have no idea what the issue was and I don't care because it's someone else's country. Their politics aren't relevant here. So unless they're the politics where they decide what's going to happen to the top end of this island, then they're relevant. This is about something else. Some drivel. It might have been about that property tax. There was a big deal over there. There was a time back in the 80s and 90s, the media that was available to you was whoever came in over an aerial or over your cable television or your radio. And a lot of that would come from England. Local news came on Irish television. You didn't want to watch that. You'd switch over to some English thing and they'd be showing the news as well because they used to have a 9 o'clock news on the BBC as well. You say, no, I don't want to watch that either. So you'd switch to BBC Two and they'd have a thing called Not the 9 o'clock News. It was a sketch show that had satire in it. They'd make you watch that and you'd inadvertently soak up some English politics through it. And it'd be absolutely infuriating. So you had your man now of Mr. Bean, he was on it. You had Billy Connolly's future wife and future psychiatrist, she was on it. And then you had your man and the other fella who became Smith and Jones. And then Smith became nobody about 10, 15 years ago because he died. He became nobody. And not in a good way. People who do meditation and Eastern religions, they talk about becoming nobody. And it usually means they've meditated so much that they figure out how to achieve Nirvana. You teach yourself through meditation. You look at your foot, say, that's a foot. It's part of this body that I'm in, but it's not me. I'm not my foot. And then you go, that's my leg. It's attached to the shell that I live inside for these 70 years or so, but it's not me. I'm not my leg. And then you go, I am not my stomach. And I am not my face. And I am not my teeth. And I am not my internal organs. And I am not my hair. And then eventually you get to, I am not my brain. And then eventually you go to, I am not this thought. None of this is me. I don't exist in this thing at all. None of this is me. I'm nothing and nobody. And apparently that's where you reach Nirvana. It's considered great. It's absolutely fantastic. You go, I'm a nobody and I love it. I think the idea is that when you die, there's nothing to die. You haven't lost anything. You're still there. You're still there or you're nothing. Something along those lines. The problem is, it involves meditation. It sounds a great thing to achieve, but it involves meditating, which involves turning off your podcast player and your Netflix and your internet and your cats and every other distraction, turning off your audiobooks and sitting there with your own thoughts for an hour a day, which is a hellish thing to do. So no, you can't do that. That's not possible anymore. That's not possible in today's society, and it'll never be possible again until after World War IV, World War III. No, I'm not going to go into that. I've already explained what World Wars III, IV, and V, respectively, will be like in an episode of Matchstick Cats. So if you go to IntoYourHead.ie and use the search box to search for World War, you should find that. There's an episode of Matchstick Cats, the webcomic, where I explain what World War III and World War IV and World War V will consist of. So I don't want to repeat myself. Anyway, that's that. If you ever have an opportunity to travel to the North Pole of the moon of another planet, not in the usual way that we go to the North Pole here, you're not on a sleigh, you're on a space shuttle or something, which I would consider to be cheating. You think of all the great explorers who conquered the North Pole on our planet. They didn't go around in flying vehicles powered by rockets and explosives that could resist gravity. No, they went on foot with a load of smelly dogs and a toboggan, I think. Did they? Did they use a toboggan or whatever a snow thing is? Do they use snow thing? Is that cheating too? I suppose not. Going to the North Pole is nothing. Going to the North Pole is nothing. You're not even climbing. You can claim you're at the top of the world. You haven't even climbed a mountain. You go into some classroom after you've conquered the North Pole or become the 87th person to go there because it was conquered some time ago. You go there and then you get all these teachers inviting you in to talk to their classes. They go, oh, here's a man who's been to the North Pole. So you go in and you decide, oh, I'll show them on the globe where the North Pole is and how I got there. I'll show them, there's where I live. I live down there, on that continent there. And the North Pole is up there on the very top of the globe. See, look us. You have to go all the way up there, up there. It's a steady slope of whatever it is. I don't know how many degrees that is. How many degrees is the curvature of the Earth? Or the curvature of a globe? I don't know. Actually, now that you mention it, a curve isn't even the same as a slope. If you had a curved pyramid, that wouldn't be a pyramid at all, and that wouldn't be a slope. Suppose you're still going steadily up. It's probably more difficult than a straight, diagonal line, I suppose. Are you going up a curved slope? It's perfectly curved, almost perfectly curved, like a globe is. You're telling the children that you're going up there, so the children think, oh, you climbed all the way up to the North Pole. You know full well that's what they're thinking, but you won't correct them because you have an ego. You have an ego on you. You want them to think, oh, this great explorer went to the North Pole is nothing. And the South Pole is even less. That's why people never talk about it. The South Pole, is that the one that's all water? I'm not sure. Or it's all land. Or no, the North Pole is land, but it's covered in snow. And the South Pole is water. I can never remember. I don't think there's much at the South Pole anyway. You go down there, you get to the end of the earth, down past Africa and down past Australia and down past New Zealand and Tasmania, and then you get to some ocean and you go across this ocean, and it's exactly like that movie with Jim Carrey where he's on a reality show, The Truman Show. There's this movie, it's a comedy movie, a touching comedy drama movie starring Jim Carrey, who's a lunatic. They have him as this fella who was born on a reality show, a Big Brother style television reality show. Every major event in his life is being filmed and he's completely unaware that he's on television, that millions of people have been watching him since the day he was born. And then one day he goes out to sea. I forget the exact details. Does he get in a boat or something? I think so. He gets in a boat or a canoe or something and goes out to the horizon and finds the sky is just a bit of cardboard. It's the edge of the set. And you go up the stairs and open the door and then you go out into the real world. Now, I don't think the South Pole is even that good. I think you get to the South Pole and it just sort of fades out. Everything just sort of gradually fades out. You don't even notice it at first. And then eventually you notice you're in your boat. You're on. Wait, do you get a boat to the North Pole or do you walk? I'm not sure. The South Pole. I suppose you get a boat and then eventually you get to a part that's ice and you walk on that and hope to Christ it doesn't melt under your feet. If you fall through a hole in the ice that you're walking on, then you're going to end up in the water but underneath the ice. And that's fucking terrifying. That's never happened to me. I've seen it covered on disaster shows where people tell about how they fell through a hole in the ice. They got stuck under the ice and then they got carried along by the current, so they're under another part of the ice where there's no hole, and they can't use power tools to get out because you get electrocuted if you use those in the water. You can't just take a drill with you in case you get stuck under the ice. No. Better hope to hell that the current brings you to somewhere where there's a gap in the ice and that you get there within about 30 seconds because you'll be holding your breath. For a lot of things, the advice people give for a lot of things is don't hold your breath. And usually they're saying it rather cynically. They're saying someone's being optimistic and they're saying something will happen. And someone else will say, don't hold your breath. Well, if you hold your breath in that situation, that horrible, scary situation, holding your breath might save you there. Holding your breath can be good. The longer you can do it, the better chance you have of being alive. Ironically, because you have to breathe to stay alive. There are situations where holding your breath and refusing to breathe either in or out for as long as you can will keep you alive. So just bear that in mind. Anyway, you get to the South Pole. I presume everything just sort of gradually fades out and you don't notice. It's like when you're on a plane and it gradually starts getting brighter. The sun doesn't just suddenly pop up like the lights being switched on. No, the earth kind of gradually fades away. You're walking along the ice or going along on your toboggan, and gradually the world just fades away. Yeah, and you're there, you're just humming a song to yourself, you're daydreaming in another world, and next thing you know, you look around you, and you hadn't noticed it happening, but you look around you and suddenly you're in space.